what our company focuses on is helping small businesses thrive by focusing in on that place where they are extraordinary, where they find that unique, extraordinary sparkle that makes them, irresistibly great for the people that want to help them or the people that want to use them, right? And then that becomes like a flywheel that starts to naturally create success by people raving about you and by creating raveable things. You know what I mean? We want to think about all the ways in which you guys are raveable.
Okay.
And, and then we could probably come up with a few. Well, if you're really the one, coming up with it, but just like, what are the raveable things that will make people shout about you so that everything becomes easier, growth becomes easier, fundraising becomes easier, sales become easier. Yeah.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, good. Okay, great. And then do you want to start by talking about where you guys are now? I know you guys are just starting out. And you have like an online store, is that right?
Yes, we do.
Great. Are you familiar with other models, but on food desert programs around the country or things like that?
Yeah, around the country.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just curious, like who else is doing things and like what's working, things like that.
Yeah, we've done some research. Not, I wouldn't say an extensive amount, but yes, we've done some research on it.
Because it strikes me that one of the things that you're doing here, sorry, excuse me, one second.
Sure.
So it strikes me that you're talking about a hybrid model. Well, it's a social enterprise, right? But a social enterprise is trying to get energy, like a traditional enterprise is trying to get energy from money, period, right? In a certain sense. Actually, even a traditional enterprise shouldn't just try to get energy from money. They should try and get energy from serving the community and that bring that sparkle to that business. But then a social enterprise is also looking for sort of helping create a model. So to me, if you guys can be successful, it's about, well, okay, bottom line, it's about the people in your community over there can actually have a place to go and shop, right? That feels good to them. And then could you talk a little more about that? Like, what's the vision there of like, what would be the beautiful vision of fully arisen in East Oakland? Like, what would that look like?
That would look like creating that access that's missing. We want and are pursuing a store that's in a centralized location that's easily accessible by public transportation, in a residential neighborhood, and also, a decent amount of parking. And that way, anyone pretty much can shop. If you're really close by, it's right there. Or if you're not too far away, it's not like taking you completely out of the way, which is what the situation is right now. For everyone pretty much who lives in East Oakland. I am an East Oakland resident. I don't shop in East Oakland because most of the stores here don't carry quality foods. The foods that they carry are overpriced and it's just not worth it. So the whole goal is for us to bring back that access and making sure that the community understands that this is a community-driven organization too. It's not like Whole Foods or Safeway or something popped up. We actually are real people who truly care about this community. So we want to make sure that the things that we bring are things that the folks want and things that the folks need, which we are working to understand that and make sure that we bring it as well, and make sure that they understand that they really do have a say in this. And that's really the most important piece of it.
Yeah, that's amazing. So that's really encouraging people to do a lot of things that they wouldn't have done before, like to say, hey, you know, you want these kind of tortillas, or you want this kind of granola, or like
Exactly.
that. It's like it's asking a certain energy from them, and input. But then if they get that enthusiasm to feel like, wow, you know, they're responding to us, they're listening to us. This is a two-way conversation,
Exactly. It's
right?
all about
Yeah.
empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, our name is the Deep, but it's actually an acronym for Deep East Oakland Empowering the People. And that's really what we want to do, is drive
Yeah.
back the idea of not just access, but driving back your power, because now you do have a voice and a
Yeah.
say in what you're eating and what you're doing to your body. So we also, at the same time of bringing groceries, we're really big on bringing this educational aspect of everything.
That's wonderful. I was thinking, like, part of what's so cool about this is that it could look very different in another part of the country, in another community.
Yeah.
Because it's like the same principle, but might look different because there's different people there and decide to do different things.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Exactly.
I mean, in a lot of ways, I feel like what you're trying to do is resonant with what we're trying to do, in the sense of, um, what I'm very interested in is helping to create businesses that listen, that hear, that are, you know, it's like you always have to start with a starting point, which is like a premise, which is like people need this thing, right? You have to start with the
Yeah.
spine of like, this is what our principles are, right? But then
Right.
there's the yin and the yang. The yang is like, these are our principles and we're not diverging from them. But then the yin is like, what do you want? You know, what would be helpful here? And I've seen a few places in old, like in health food store or co-op, where they have a really good system where they have um, the little cards where you fill out and say what you want, and then they respond to that. And I
Mm-hmm.
always thought that may still be the way to do it, you know, in 2021 too. It's just that
Yeah.
human, person by person thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Have you looked about the economics? I know you were talking that you're kind of becoming one of the like the numbers person, or learning, but like, have you looked at like the economics of grocery stores, or do you have taps into sort of people that understand that whole, you know, how you make that work economics
Yeah,
wise?
we have a good relationship with the folks over at Mandela Grocery Co-op. I can't remember if I shared that with you or not, but they help us a lot with just building and running ideas by them as well. And I've connected with
Mhm.
their financial team to understand kind of the background and how that piece works. So yeah.
Is that the place that's on? Oh no, there was a place that I think opened up on San Pablo in.
That's a different one. That's a
Okay.
community foods market.
Oh yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
Mandela is over on 7th Street. They're right across from the West Oakland BART station.
Oh, right, right, right. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
That's exciting. Okay, good. So, yeah, because I think there, you want to have. Are you also thinking about getting grants and funding and things like that, or is it going to be
We
fully?
definitely.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. Like I was mentioning that when we went to see Planting Justice, that they have really a hybrid model where it's like they're set up so that they can earn the majority of what they need through the business, but they can top it off with, you know, some grants and donations, which is a really cool model. I mean, so like they're able to pay a living wage. They're able to pay, and they're able to support workers who normally, he said, like they would be in shitty jobs, to He
Yeah.
didn't say that word, but that they would be in shitty jobs where they felt undervalued, they didn't feel important. And he said actually that, yeah, so they are good to go out and visit and talk to him sometimes because they're smart. I think they know a lot. And he said a big part of what people like, they like to stay there. They mostly don't like to go out and start their own landscaping businesses or what have you, because they just love, they get supported,
Yeah.
they get validated and supported as valuable people, not just the money. The whole thing.
Yeah. We do have a good relationship with Planting Justice. I actually have talked to quite a few people over there, so familiar with them.
Yeah.
We also right now, I guess you could say we do operate as a hybrid model because we do have our online store, and then the rest of our funding right now really does come from donations and grants. So we are kind of in that space too.
Yeah. Good. So where do you okay, so where do you feel we can get the most, or you can get the most out of this conversation? What do you feel is the biggest space where you'd like help or a clearer vision? And I will say that our area of expertise is in marketing. And there's sort of two sides to marketing. Like the side of marketing that everybody knows about is like running ads or like doing blog posts or making videos. And that is a side of marketing. The other side of marketing is like who you are, how you show up in the world, how you listen, how you create value for people, how you tune in to what's the most exciting part of what they really, really want, right? So like there are actually two sides of the coin. And sometimes we see companies where it's like they have the one part dialed in. Like, for example, they might have a great customer service thing when you come to their shop, but their social media looks totally different. It's like not dialed into that at all. It's just generic. Or they're like, we don't want to do social media because we don't want to seem inauthentic. Right. So like a big part of our thing is finding those places in the business where there's sparkle, you know, or you already get sparkle, and then parts of how do you extend that so that the sparkle goes full circle through the whole system, and then you just get this like momentum of enthusiasm. So anyway, that's kind of what we do. Where do you feel would you want the most help? First of all, in terms of getting that momentum and enthusiasm rolling.
Yeah. In terms of getting the momentum and enthusiasm going, I'd say we're stuck with still finding our target audience. I think we did a good job at defining who that is. We know that it's specifically folks who live in deep East Oakland. But aside from that, we're still struggling with making sure that those people know who we are. We've gotten a pretty big buzz as far as like neighboring cities and areas, but we're still not attracting the people who we actually want to get to. So I'd say that's a challenge for us.
Right.
And that also is leading into a challenge of right now, we aren't really seeing too many sales in our store. And we've kind of gotten into this groove where we have this base of folks who are kind of repeat customers, and they're ordering from us regularly. But again, they're still not in our target area. So that's kind of causing a little challenge. And that's leading into our product selection. A lot of the things that we're buying, we're noticing, of course, since our reach isn't that far, people aren't buying a lot of things basically, or the things that we're buying, maybe a certain amount of people are getting it, but not like a majority of it. So we're noticing like things are going bad, or, you know, we're not moving them quickly enough. And then since you mentioned marketing, I would definitely say that's an area where we could use some strategies as well. I think all of that leads back into, you know, making sure that people are aware of what it is that we're doing and increasing our reach and uplifting our voices, and trying to do that in a way that really tells the story of who we are. I think that we kind of got to a point where we were resting on, oh, people know us now, so we don't have to, do so much marketing or outreach and things like that. But now it is a new wave and it's a new time. So we do have to continuously do that. So just finding a way to continue that flow in a way that feels comfortable and natural to us, and not that we're going like completely out of our way to do things on our social
Exactly.
media for this or that. Yeah.
Exactly. That's totally my philosophy too. It's like if it's a natural part of your flow, then it's gonna be good. If it's like,
Yeah.
just someone's just off there doing, yeah, exactly. Yeah, generic
Yeah.
social media is stupid. hmm Exactly. Well, one
Exactly.
of the things that you're describing, like I'm guessing that the people that have caught the wave so far might
Mhm.
be more of the activist um, type of people that are part of
Yeah.
this whole thing that, I'm somehow slightly related to, that, you're related to, and fighting
Yeah.
justice, and like all of those people that are just really interested in those things, right?
Mhm.
But then
Mhm.
you have but then you have the like, so then it could be like feeling like, oh, we have this momentum because those people think that we're really cool. But then it's like,
Mhm.
what about just like the mom with 3 kids in like East Oakland
Right.
or whatever that just like needs
Exactly.
some groceries, and like how do we reach her and like and have her feel valued, and like that's, right, because and she's
Mhm.
just like trying to make ends meet and like deal with life, so like, and
Yeah.
then last year all COVID as well, everything,
Yeah.
right, whatever that brought along.
Yeah.
So yeah, one of the tools that you could use just in the simplest way is to just write out, we have like a whole thing about it, but it's just in the simplest way, is a customer persona, or like
We do
or
actually have
customer
that.
portrait. Oh, good. That's
Yeah.
good. You I'm seeing two customer personas at least right now. One is
Hmm.
the activist type, because those are
Hmm.
the right, and that's a different person, right? Like, or there might,
Right. Very.
but then what are the different types that show up in the community that feel like, we hate to like label people or whatever, but people do tend
Right.
to sort of cluster in terms of different types and things, and
Right.
you can kind of
Right.
notice. Have you thought about what are the most likely buyers, or have you done any thoughts about that, about like, who that person is, those types of
We
people?
have, as far as the
Okay.
personas that we've come up with, we know, well, we feel that the most likely buyers are definitely older folks who,
Mm-hmm.
typically want to eat healthier anyway. And then the activist type, I want to say, is not necessarily a target, but we know that those folks will likely shop with us because, again, these are people who are socially conscious and,
Right.
environmentally healthy and all of that.
Yep.
And then families, we've considered either single families or large families who just really need nutritious food for everyone in their household. And then we've identified folks that we'd like to reach, but we're not entirely sure if they would shop with us, which are people like younger folks who are just, living in the area. Maybe they're interested in trying healthy things, and we could um,
Yeah.
do things to bring them in. But I'd say for the most
Right.
part, definitely the senior groups and like the families is for sure who we want to target more.
Great. That's good. That's good to be um, laser focused on, like, start there. Don't
Yeah.
worry about the ones where you're like, well, we think they have potential. If only they would think a little differently, because now you're having to do all that work to get them to think differently,
Exactly.
instead
Yep.
of like, yeah, the ones that are like, the ones you want, the core juicy market is always like the ones where it's like, well, if only we had a thing that was like blah 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 blah, and then you're like, we have that thing. That's
Right.
what you
Right.
want. Or you're like, well, we have that thing pretty close, but like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how juicy is this thing? And if they're like a 7, then you're like, what would we have to do to make it a 10? So
Yeah.
then you start listening and start being like, how attractive is this to you? And how would you be interested in shopping here? The proof is always in the pudding when people actually start buying. But at least you can start by asking them, would you shop here? Like, would that be interesting to you?
Exactly.
And on a scale of 1 to 10, and if they say it's a 7, you ask them what would we have to do to make it a 10.
That's a really
Get
good
them
point.
to start envisioning, right?
Yeah.
Way back when I was a little kid in the 70s, in the early 70s, my mom, there was a co-op in Berkeley. It's gone now, but they had childcare at the co-op.
Wow.
So my little sister got to be in the childcare while my mom went shopping.
Wow.
Yeah. And I just thought about that because Melanie from the Alliance just told me yesterday that there's 2 gals out in Lafayette that are creating a co-working space that has childcare.
Oh, wow.
I know, for working women, working moms and things like that. So I
Wow.
was like, wow, that is a really, really cool thing. So
Nice.
I don't know if, but that just made me think about how creative they were getting back then when they had this co-op, grocery store, which was very successful for many decades, actually, the co-op in Berkeley.
That's amazing.
I know, right? So like helping people get, like, when you ask people, it's magic sometimes to just ask them what would they want, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like that's a big part of marketing that people don't think is marketing, is like listening and showing people that you care and then responding to that. So one thing you could do, it just popped into my mind as a possible thing you could do, is some visioning days. Like one thing we did outside the hub one time, some people did a thing where they put up these like cardboard I don't know, like they stood up these cardboards, so they might have been triangles or whatever, or you could put it on a wall where you say like, what's your vision of, food in East Oakland? What's your vision of, and then you give them like pens and Post-its or like places to write, on the board and things like that. And over a few days, you get some volunteers to like stand in a major corner, maybe get some backing from, I don't know, some local place that lets you be there, and then like get them to share their visions, right, of what would your ideal be. And hopefully like a lot of people come. And I think there are all kinds of ways you could do that to sort of inspire people to say, we're building this thing, right? We're building this thing and we want your input, and get there. Yeah. And that would be really interesting because it is interesting to think of how you make that, how you get that listening to those other people, to those general people in the community that may not be like activists or entrepreneurs, and find out, really measure the interest, really get a feel for what would be a 10 for them. I mean, and obviously one of the places where you're likely to hit your challenges is on price. That's one of those realities where you have those giants that can, get real cheap, and I assume that that's a place where you're going to have, that's going to be an area where you're going to always have to sort of be aware, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. Of like, well, yeah, I want healthier food, but I also need to save money and blah, blah, blah. And that's, I mean, to me, that my guess is that's going to be one of the major things. Like, I mean, I could be wrong, but that my guess is that's going to be like, that you're going to find a lot of people that are like, I'll pay a little more, but I can't pay a lot more. Right? You know what I mean? So like, what are your thoughts about that?
Absolutely. I would say price comes up a lot in our conversations, because we do recognize that the reality is a lot of folks in East Oakland aren't making a huge amount of money. So we know that. So we want to make sure that our prices are as competitive as possible. And we've even seen that in real time as we're out we set up at the Acoma Market, which happens over in Eastmont. And there have been plenty of times when folks have come by our stand and they're like, oh, I want to try this thing. And we tell them the price and they're like, oh, I want it, but I can't really afford it. The market
Right,
was also doing this thing where they were giving vouchers where folks could use it to buy produce, which was awesome. By doing that, we
right.
were able to get a lot of people to shop with us who normally wouldn't. They were really excited to use these vouchers and try out this fresh produce. And we were even letting them buy food items with it as well. So we definitely have seen that. So we know for a fact that price is for sure going to be a challenge. And it's tricky for us because we do work really hard to make sure that our prices are as competitive as possible by way of, keeping them as affordable as possible, but also trying to make sure that we're not like losing money in the process too. So it's a really fine line.
Exactly. I know. I mean, and so that your role as the numbers person, that's going to be that
Yeah.
key piece probably for you.
Yeah.
Of how do we make this work? I think planning justice, I'm sure they don't have a lot of extra, but they definitely seem like they're succeeding in creating living wages for
Yeah.
people and things like that. So that's an inspiring model to think about, that they're being able to do this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that seems key. Like it's interesting because like when you talk about people that are sort of middle class, upper middle class, wealthy people, you can talk a lot about all this extra that they're willing to spend. I mean, at the higher end, some people want to spend more money. Like they want to spend more money. They want to buy that handbag that's like
Yeah.
$1,000. It's like because it's $1,000. You know what I mean? Like, but food is very practical. So
Food is
um,
the one thing that people will not spend on, is what I'm noticing.
well, I think
Typically.
we're conditioned to just be like, give me the cheapest food or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I wonder if there's some room in terms of helping to educate people is a little patronizing, but helping show people like how to cook. I mean, because obviously the other thing is if you show people how to cook their own food instead of using
Hmm.
convenience foods, and how to prepare good
Exactly.
beans and vegetables and all of those things, like there could be
Hmm.
some room there possibly in terms of like cooking workshops, or
Yeah.
like what if you created an offer that wasn't just here come buy our food, but here come to our cooking workshop every Saturday afternoon or what have you. That would
Hmm.
be like, here's how you use these foods and here's why they're so much healthier and here's how you're going to feel when you're doing this for a few weeks of eating this way.
Hmm.
And people were if you had people in the community talking about how they felt better, or like how they saved money by learning to cook this way. um,
Yeah.
I mean, I would guess some of the people in those communities are perfectly good at knowing how to cook with cheap ingredients, but maybe some aren't, or like with like raw with basic ingredients, etc. But it'd just be interesting to think about like what would add value there, right?
Yeah.
Like for them, like what would be exciting to them, and thinking bigger than just like we. So one of the things I've been thinking a lot about bookstores lately because I love bookstores
Oh,
and
me too.
local bookstores. Oh, nice. And like what I feel like is like bookstores, they evolved as a good business model for people that love learning or love going on adventures or what have you for generations. But the trouble with bookstores now is now there's 20 different other ways to get your information. And
Yeah.
so now they still think they're in the bookstore business, the book business, but they're not really in the printed book business at all. What they should be is in the business of helping people get information and feel meaning and feel community and feel connection. So a few of the bookstores really get that. So they start
Mhm.
innovating. But I was thinking like, why can't there be like a kiosk at the bookstore? If you feel you prefer to buy it as an audiobook, you could just
Mm.
press a button and get the audiobook, or if
Mm.
or the ebook, the non-Kindle Kindle, the like the
Mhm.
independent thing. right. And
Mm-hmm.
also, like, when I go into a bookstore, I feel, I noticed a lot, like, I feel just overhearing the conversations of the other book buyers makes me, I want to know, and just the little interactions I get with the book, the checkout person of like, oh, this is a good one, you know what I mean? Or just like all
Yeah.
those little things, and feeling like I'm part of a community of book buyers matters a lot to me, a lot. And I
Yeah.
think during the pandemic, we became more aware, don't you think, of all the
Yeah.
ways in which stores, like local stores, provide value in our lives.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Right. And it's like I went to Walden Books in, Grand Avenue, and it was like, wow, such a big deal to go and buy this book and be part of that place when
Yeah.
it first things started to open up again.
Right. Right.
Yeah. But the reason I'm saying all this is because you might think, well, we're not necessarily in just the food selling business.
Mm-hmm.
One of the key principles of our philosophy is you never want to be a commodity.
Yeah.
Now, this is an interesting challenge for you guys because, on the one hand, you have a model that's full of value, full of meaning, full of importance. And on
Mm-hmm.
the other hand, it's something that's seen as a commodity,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you've got this small little community of people now that are more of the activist types, as we're calling them, that
Mm-hmm.
are, they probably wouldn't think twice of spending a little more on a few things, because it's more, they might have a little more money, they might not. My
Mm-hmm.
guess is that they might not. They're spending, they're, so why are they spending that extra money? Because it has meaning, right? Has
That's true.
meaning to them. It tells a story about, like, I'm paying extra for living in a world that matter, like with people that care about me. Right.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to think about. This is a thing I would think about as I go along, is this kind of thing, because I think that tension will always be there, right?
Yeah.
Because you'll always have this thing of, well, I could go to Food for Less or whatever and buy a giant bag of this stuff where it lasts me forever, and then maybe it's not as good quality. There's always
Mm-hmm.
going to be that tension in your business. At the same
Mm-hmm.
time, what we're really interested in is what is called the passion economy.
Mm-hmm.
A guy at the beginning of 2020, Adam Davidson, wrote a book called The Passion Economy. And it's really, really great book and inspired us a lot. And it's about how small businesses thrive in a culture of generic, boring, stuff that's
Mm-hmm.
cheap, right? And all that. And competing with China and competing with things like that for a lot of things
Yeah.
too, right? So, like, he has a podcast too, which has gives you a lot of the flavor as well for free as well. But
Mm-hmm.
it's all very, very good. So what you're always doing is trying to find that sweet spot where you're special and where you're different and where people do value you more, right? And do see. So I could just see being very interesting, like the way into finding where your sweet spot is, where people will value you the most, is
Yeah.
always with kind of being in that conversation of listening, like, what do you guys really need? Like, maybe they would discover things about going to the grocery store they never thought they would find at the grocery store.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like more care, more humanity, more decency,
Yeah.
more connection. So
Yeah. That's a really good point. That got me thinking. The fact that we're an online store is unique in itself. It's proving to be challenging to sell groceries online because the reality is most
right.
people go to the grocery store for the experience of being in a store. So for us, overcoming that looks different than other places. But I can't say I think that we have overlooked this idea that you're talking about, being passionate and showing people we are passionate, but the people who are shopping with us only know that once they start shopping with us. They haven't seen that really from us. There's not a lot of us that's being portrayed in what we're doing. It's just a lot of, oh yeah, we're bringing this store and we're doing these great things, but people don't truly understand who we are as folks and our backstory, and even understanding how this project came, because all of it really is true to why we still are committed to doing this work and how much we love it and why we want to continue seeing it succeed. So we have to do our due diligence and make sure that folks recognize that as well. And I think that really is the sweet spot right there, is the fact that we are really, really passionate about this job.
That's so great. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, and it's interesting, yeah, like the online thing. Yeah, like how do you convey that online? I mean, and in your case, I wonder if the ultimate vision was to be an online business, then I would just say, okay, let's talk about some ways where you can convey that online, because that's definitely one of the number one things we do, is like, how do you convey that feeling online? Or if you have a personal store. So that is definitely one of the things that we think a lot about. I'm also curious if, like, how much do you want to put your resources into that versus finding ways to do a pop-up or a farmer's market or things, like, I know when now the Impact Hub is sadly gone as of last year, but things come and then they go, and sometimes, but they started as a pop-up, or sometimes big old stores, start up as like a table, a folding table at a market, you know what I mean? And then they grow from there. So I kind of wonder if there might be space for, like, some of you guys to be coming out on a farmer's market or something and just being that shop in one table to start out, where you modeling you can really prototype the model of what you want to create in the feeling. And I really saw when you were talking that it's like, it's this wonderful interplay of, like, who we are and, like, being solid in that, and also who you are and how much we care about you and how much we care about listening to you. And, like, I could just see this pop up where there's, like, these here. So it's kind of evolving these ideas, right? Maybe farmers market every Saturday would have you have the big one of those big cardboard things like they have for science experiment fairs and things like that, where you just say, what do you want? And, like, have lots of colorful paper and pens to write on, and get the little kids to write and get the moms to write and get everyone to write, what do you want? Until it's, big. Maybe get it started, put a few of your own or something. And so then, even when you're selling your groceries at this farmer's market, you're already showing, we want to make it more of what you want. What would you want to see in East Oakland? We're here for you. We're here. So you're embodying this vision, and you're embodying the listening, and also you're bridging that gap between the idealist innovator, which you are, and the practical consumer, which is what most people are, right? So you're taking that enthusiasm, which they're going to love. They're going to be, like, drawn to that, you know what I mean? And then you're also like, wow, they're not just, like, inspired people, blah, 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 blah. They actually inspired to help us. Like, they're really interested. When I came and I was talking about how I can't get food that's in the right sizes, or I can't get this thing, or I have to drive all the way to get this, they were super interested, and they really, really took the time. The person really took the time to sit with me for 10 minutes listening and writing down what I had to say, and we put it up on the board, and they got my phone number, and we said, we'll get back to you when we have that, or whatever. Like, that feeling, you could really be, and you're building the relationship from the very ground, from the very beginning. So that's a thought or an inspiration I have, is a way to build this in a microcosm, because I don't think you want to be an online store ultimately. It's not about the food. It's not about the sales. It's about the whole.
Exactly. And that is, I would say that's something that we've discussed before too. Of course, we are starting in this online model. And like I told you, we do the pop-up at one farmer's market, and we've talked about doing pop-up elsewhere, but that really is the goal, to get our faces and our personalities and our stories and everything out there so that folks are drawn to that. And then that way we secure these people now. And once we have our brick and mortar store, they're going to continue shopping with us. So that's absolutely part of the plan.
Exactly. How often do you do the Acoma? Is it Acoma market?
Acoma, yeah. It's interesting. It's changing now. At one point it was twice a month, but they're scaling back a little bit. So I believe it's going to be once a month now.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's there's several pieces. So that's an inspiration that came to me. It was this idea of really focusing on the markets, almost like you said, once we have our physical store, which is like, yes, definitely. But at the same time, energetically, you always starting with good seed. Yeah. And when you have a good seed, you can grow a really strong plant. And by starting with these little markets is how I saw, I mean, of just at the farmer's market, where you're really establishing, how do we want to be there? We want to learn how to really listen. We want to learn how to really take that feedback. We want to really learn to people to feel that energy of this communication, this conversation, and the responsiveness. That's the seed version of it right there. And then as you grow, you can be like, now we have 4 tables at the market, and now we have a pop-up, and now we have a small store, and now we have a bigger store, right? But it's like you're starting that it's so much a relationship as much as it is about the food. It's about, I could see that working. And the other thing is, a critical thing is, again, is bridging the gap between the idealist innovators and the ordinary people that need their groceries, because that's always going to be, that's how it gets, you know, from people like us that just always thinking about the ideal to like every people that just, you know, have their practical needs.
Definitely.
Yeah. So that's what I see as addressing several key spaces that are the critical spaces. So what I see as the critical spaces in your business model, as I can see it now, are being sure you listen and create a culture of listening. Create a culture of actively listening and learning, because that's a learning process. I don't know how to do it nearly as well as I could do it. You know what I mean? I'm always learning, like, how do I set things up so that people really tell me what they think? People don't do that naturally. They don't want to tell you. They're quiet. They don't feel like they want to be heard. They don't feel listened to. They're shy. If you put that board up, it might be a while before people start putting things on it. You know what I mean? So like creating that culture where people are excited to put those things up and actually believe they'll be listened to, that's a learning process on your end. See what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're practicing not just how do we sell groceries, and then we have some ideal floating in a cloud that we know what it is, but people don't get it, but you're actually living it, right? That's a process.
Yeah.
For you learning, while you're selling the groceries, you're selling the idea of being listened to. I just see that working well. It's like 2 people, 3 people at a time, maybe taking shifts or whatever at the farmer's market every Saturday, what have you, as being like our practice of really building this healthy seed that I could see if you do that, that enthusiasm will spread and spread. Like I talk to them, these idealistic kids, and then it sounds pretty cool what they're doing. You know what I mean? Maybe I want to volunteer.
Yeah.
And so
absolutely.
Yeah, so I feel like, to my vision, it's like a way of building that seed really well. And you're learning how to adjust or adapt or get visions, and really taking that seriously and share your vision, learning how to get it across, and that spirit will infuse the whole store once you have your store. Because you look at
Mm-hmm.
what works and what doesn't work in an idealistic business. Cultures reflect the people that started the business, the good parts
Definitely.
and the bad parts.
Mm-hmm.
And the healthy parts and the parts that are still growing, right? So like if you can grow that culture, like all those, I just see that as a way of growing the seed of the thing you really want to see. So I don't know. What do you, I've been talking, I always talk a lot, but like, what do you think about that?
That makes a lot of sense though. And I can definitely see that working. The more we talk about it and the more I think about it, I want to say that is a key piece that's missing from us is making sure that people really do understand the message and where we're coming from and why we're doing this. So I could see in this alternative model where we're starting from a small seed and kind of growing from there to build this thing up. I think I want to say we kind of jumped the gun in certain scenarios and, made assumptions and tried things out. And now we're recognizing that those things aren't working. So we kind of do have to go back to square one, which is really figure out exactly who our target is, what they want to see, and finding a way to implement that. And I think doing that on the ground is going to be the best way to get us to where we need to be.
Exactly. That's what I feel too. And one of my missions is to so Silicon Valley has developed all these wonderful methods of innovation and prototyping and all that. And for the most part, they brought it to like making billionaires or what have you. But these tools are very useful for everybody. So it's like rapid prototyping and creating small little easy to change, easy to grow model that, yeah, because you never start with the idea fully formed in mind, like, okay, we want that, let's build that. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I could just really see where it's like, yeah, it can be easy to start with, okay, I mean, it kind of sounds a little bit like what's evolving through this conversation is that you had this huge amount of idealism, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're like, well, we're selling groceries, so let's make an online store.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that have been responding to that are the people that already got your vision. They
Right.
were already bought in. They were the tiny minority of people that already bought into that vision because of all the work they've done, all the things they've done in
Right.
their lives, their personality. But all those sort of ordinary family people are just like living their lives. And so then
Right.
that's the key thing. It's like just like with the bookstore thing, you're not really selling groceries. You are, but you're selling an experience of feeling cared about. Oh,
Yeah.
you wouldn't care about this if it wasn't for that. You just say go to Costco or whatever. You just
Exactly.
say,
Exactly.
you know, find a friend who has a car and go to Costco, but it's like it's so much more than that,
Yeah, exactly.
right? And so I see this kind of model of just starting real small with the farmers markets as a way of living that experience for people, one
Mm-hmm.
bag of beans at a time or what have you, you
Mm-hmm.
know. Yeah. And thinking, I mean, who knows what could come out of it? Maybe there's a delivery thing that comes out of it. Maybe you just have a few groceries there and then you take orders, or you get, it's a very rapid place to innovate. And yeah, it's interesting to think about how you're simultaneously innovating in terms of like all the logical things of like what kind of groceries do you want, but also how do we help people feel heard and listened to and responded to, but still maintaining that spine of our principles and our vision, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I see it. I see it as that bridge to like grow that seed that we don't know exactly what shape it's going to be, but it's just like exactly what kind of tree it's going to be, you know, but like it's going to be a healthy seed because it's going to be fed by all of the care, all the enthusiasm that you draw in from the
Yeah,
community.
absolutely.
Yeah. So that's my vision. I mean, that's kind of how I work. I just kind of like hopefully listen enough, hopefully, hopefully, well, I always know I give my opinions, but like hopefully listen enough. Yeah, it's just interesting to think about how you bridge the gap from the idealists to the day-to-day people is always a challenge.
Yeah,
Um, and how you grow the culture you want while you're growing the business. Because then, like, 5 years from now, the people that are sitting at that table asking the people what do they want, they could be working at the checkout stand, or they could be working in the
yeah,
ordering. And
exactly.
then they've got that vibe, they've got that feeling, they have those memories of all those conversations they had, that those people are coming into the store and
Exactly.
bringing their friends. And so it creates this cycle.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. That's
Yeah, this
cool.
was really, really helpful. I appreciate this conversation.
Oh, oh, good. I appreciate it too. Yeah, it was very interesting to see how these principles kind of flesh out in this case. So
Definitely.
good, good, good.